The streets were full of hustle and bustle in Jerusalem 6 days before Passover. Everyone was there. Everybody, except the nobodies. Everybody, except the outcasts. Anyone who was anyone was in Jerusalem. But Jesus was in Bethany. Jesus was just outside of Jerusalem, looking in on the busy crowds, but not part of them, on the edge of the city that cast him out, and in a small place that offered him hospitality. Here in Bethany, away from the hustle and bustle, Jesus received a warm welcome and a warm embrace. Martha, hot with the sweat of working in the kitchen, tired from the hours of food preparation had carried on right through the night, looked up at her Jesus face and smiled. It was all worth it. It was all so worthwhile to see that she, Martha, was bringing happiness to her dear, sweet Jesus. How could people hate him so? How could people not see the love that she saw in him? He had given her dead brother back, dear Lazarus, who had been unwell for so long. She shuddered at the thought of it. She hadn't nearly lost Lazarus, she had lost him. She'd begun the grieving. She'd given people the bad news of his death. She'd lived through it. She knew she had. Yet it was untrue. Lazarus was here at her table. Dear Lazarus, her own dear brother, sometimes sanctimonious, sometimes cold, even brutal with his words, but he was here, and sanctimonious or not, he was well, and quite transformed. He was dead, but now alive, and she loved him. And that was that. Martha couldn't imagine a greater happiness, except for the sadness that seemed to linger with Jesus. Why did he suffer so? She poured the wine and spilt it. Silly, silly me, she scolded. Yet even Martha, on an evening such as this, could not stay angry for long. Her own dear brother, her own sweet Jesus, right here at her table. Who cares what's happening in Jerusalem? This is where I want to be, with the people I love most. Mary watched on. Her sister was so good at these events. She was so capable, so efficient. Yet Martha was distracted this evening, distracted in a good way, slightly unfocused. Weird, but Mary liked it. Martha had spilled the wine. Surely that was the sort of thing that she was always telling Mary off for. Mary couldn't help it. She was always distracted, in a world of her own that ran through her head day after day. It had always been that way. She'd always dreamed. She realised it now, though she hadn't seen it before. She had dreamed of meeting the Messiah. She had dreamed of a new life and a new way of living that was different to the prosaic reality of the family home. She had wanted so much. But now she saw that only one thing mattered. Only one thing mattered, and it was Jesus. She was delighted to have Lazarus there at the table. It was beyond belief, totally crazy, that Lazarus was now well and sitting at the table. And she blinked back tears as she remembered the crazy days of grieving and then the crazy days of celebrating, simply having to believe that Lazarus was truly well. But all this was because of Jesus. He was the true hero. He had brought Lazarus back to life. But hadn't Jesus brought her back to life too? Not in a physical way, but in an emotional kind of way. She'd never felt so alive since the day that Jesus first came to Bethany. She had never quite known how dead and numb she was until she discovered this energy, this glow, this passion to get up each day and hear more, learn more, do more with Jesus. And now she knew that Jesus conquers death, even death. Her mind whirred with the possibilities. Her own burial perfumes were still there on the top shelf. She'd used some for Lazarus, but she didn't need the rest. Those precious perfumes had meant so much. It was all she had to express love for her dead loved one. But now he was alive, And these crazy things that were happening in the real world were happening in her heart and in Martha's heart too. Martha had spilt the wine. She never does that. She'd cleared it up in a second, but Jesus wouldn't have minded. And crazy things were happening in Jerusalem. Terrible rumours of Jesus' death. They couldn't kill Jesus, could they? Jesus, who stands for life. Jesus who brought Lazarus back to life. Jesus who was bringing the whole world to life. They couldn't spill Jesus' blood. Things like this couldn't happen. And yet things like this, things that couldn't happen, they were happening all the time. Lazarus was well again and back from the dead. That couldn't happen. And again Mary smiled and gasped with the pure delight. And Martha spilled the wine, and that never happens. And Mary closed her eyes and saw the wine glugging and cascading across the table in her mind, the red wine, the colour of blood, and for a brief moment she imagined the blood, red wine flowing over Jesus as though it was his own blood, and she felt a gush of tears well up from within. Not Jesus' blood. She jumped up, reached high, and clenched her nard jar in both hands, and impulsively, yet knowingly, she knelt down at Jesus' feet, still weeping. She saw her tears wetting Jesus' feet. Her tears fell freely, and the feet glistened like dew. She loved these feet. She had sat at these feet and listened, rested, listened as Jesus taught. She'd examined those tired and dusty feet that spoke of long days in the hillsides, where he'd been curing, cleansing, healing, touching, loving people back to life. These beautiful feet. These beautiful feet were caring feet, tired and hurting feet, and now they were glistening feet, glistening like gold. And she broke open her jar and poured the oil, beautiful, intense fragrance rising. She breathed in heavily and immersed her hair, spreading the oil over the beautiful feet, these feet that she had fallen at in desperation on the day when Lazarus was set free from the tomb of death. She loved these feet, and these feet belonged to Jesus, who had heard her heart's cry and set Lazarus back on his feet. The memory of Lazarus walking from the tomb caused Mary to look up and see, not feet this time, but eyes, beautiful dark eyes, his beautiful eyes gazing into hers. The gaze was mutual. For a moment they were on equal terms, equally lost in the moment. He loved her like she loved him. He had tears too, but these tears spoke of pure love. They loved her. It was all she needed to know. This gaze that lasted a moment would last a lifetime. She would never forget those eyes. But suddenly Mary became aware of other eyes, eyes looking on, scowling eyes, despising eyes, shocked. The room that had seemed so silent was suddenly alive with criticism, spoken and unspoken. And the voices became clear. This woman, what is she doing? Such waste. What does she think she's doing? Who does she think she is? But Mary didn't care. Right now, she didn't care. Only one thing mattered. She had acted with her heart just as Jesus had acted with his. She'd given everything, the gift of life, which spoke from his heart, and she'd given what she had, the perfume sweet and strong and precious. But in the act, she gave her love, and she always would. She would worship Jesus until the day she died. There was nothing and no one more precious than he.
6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here, a dinner was given in Jesus' honour. Martha served, while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. Leave her alone, Jesus replied. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. You will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests made plans to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him.
is as beautiful as you. You open my eyes to your wonders anew. You captured my heart with this love, 'cause nothing on earth is as beautiful as you. Beautiful one I love, beautiful one I adore, beautiful one my soul must sing. My soul, my soul must sing. My soul, my soul must sing. My soul, my soul must sing. Beautiful one. My soul, my soul must sing. My soul, my soul must sing. My soul, my soul must sing. Beautiful one.
Mary gave the most precious thing she had. What do you have? What is on your shelf? As you look into your heart, what is stored on that shelf and kept for those most precious people and times and places? For me, I have a passion to bake. This is something stored in my heart. I dream to create meaningful moments with bakes and cakes. To aid this, I've started a patisserie skills course this week. What training have you done? What are the things you like to do? What do you make with your hands? As I made my dough this week, I was taught something's changed. When you used to make bread, you were told to knock the dough back after it had been proved. In other words, to knock the air back out so that you could then rest the dough and shape it into the type of loaf you wanted. But that advice has changed. You're no longer told to knock the dough back, but that the air that has accumulated as part of proving is valuable and makes the loaf lighter. So I thought, as I was making the dough this week, about what that means. And I thought about Jesus, about how much he loves us, about how he values every experience that we've gone through in life, and even the mistakes that we've made. He doesn't knock them out of us, he doesn't knock us back, but he loves and values us and can redeem every experience to make us more whole, more complete. What about you? What do you love to do? How can this be a gift to Jesus? Lord, I give you what is on my heart and in my heart. Help me to see what I don't know. Help me to be who I truly am. Give me a passion. Give me your passion. Show me how the things stored in the shelf of my heart can be transformed to serve you and worship you. Help me love you as Mary and Martha did. Give me the insight that helps me understand how you gave me life as a baby, and new life as a spiritual person. Help me to understand your act of love on the cross. The spilling of your blood and the giving of your life was all because of your love for me, for us, for all people. Help me to hear and know and respond with the best things that I have. I want to give in such a way that brings you joy and brings me joy too. Help us to worship you in this way, not in a religious or formal way, but a new way, in spirit and in truth. Amen.